Whoops. Good evening. I'm going to call the June 14th, 2022 Finance meeting to order. Jessica Brennan is here, John De La Rada, Bill McPartland, Elena Finnan, Elizabeth Greenwood, Janet Wynn, Dave Koshin, Ray Smith, Michelle Martinelli, Diane Percy, Seth Goldstein, thank you. Okay, may I have a motion to approve the minutes from the May 10th, 2022 Finance meeting?
Motion to approve the minutes.
Thank you. Do I have a second? Are there any changes to those minutes? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Any opposed? The minutes are approved. Moving on to items for action.
The first thing I have is the budgetary modifications. We've attached the beginnings of those. There will probably be a few more by the end of the month, but we've got most of them accounted for at this point. The second item is a resolution to amend Resolution 2022-11, which authorized the supervisor to enter into a utility credit purchase renewal agreement. Right after we had done that, they changed the person that was serving as, or rather the company serving as the distributor to Whaling Solar, which is reflected in the new contract. And so it's just updating that accordingly. All right, the third is a resolution for the supervisor to sign the pollution insurance renewal proposal. I'm happy to share that with anybody digitally. It's fairly hefty. It covers all the standard pollution liability requirements for our insurance, including acts of terrorism, which obviously would be unlikely, but we have coverage for everything we could be required to have. The next is a resolution authorizing an adjustment to expenditures from the highway fund balance. This is to reflect the increase cost that we had spoken about previously in the highway committee for the one purchase. The next is a resolution appropriating residual funds from completed capital projects for use toward like purchases. We've started working on the exact lines they need to go to. In the backup, you'll see the ones that are going towards the general and highway fund. We're completing the ones for the two sewer funds and the water funds. This was all reflected in the spreadsheet I had shared when we were initially deciding whether to bond or use fund balance towards all the various equipment purchases and so forth in support of the budget. These are all old capital projects that had little bits of money just kind of left and were sat there dormant. So we are legally permitted to take those as long as we apply them to like funds or like funding lines that keep us from bonding further. So this is just an accounting of all of those line items individually so that we'll be able to track that expenditure. Right. The next thing on the list is the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, which is more commonly known as SNAP, which used to be known as food stamps in the past. We've discussed this a number of times previously. This is for the town to basically serve as the administrator for the SNAP program for the farmers market. The way that this has worked, the Farmers Market Federation of New York State actually provides us the equipment we need for free to be able to accept this. They've also provided all the, actually they basically provided us the policy. We just tailored it a little bit. They provide all the spreadsheets on how we track any monies that are coming in and out. The way the whole system works is at the market, basically there'll be a table set up so that anybody who has, it now comes on like a little credit card, an EBT card. People will be able to come up to the table. They'll be able to scan their EBT card and say, today I'd like to use $15 off my EBT card. We give them then, we scan it, the money comes off their card and goes into a town account. We give them 15 tokens that they can spend at the vendors with farmers who have the sign displayed that they take the EBT tokens and that they have done the paperwork with us that the Farmers Market Federation has provided. They spend their tokens, they buy fresh fruits and vegetables. There's a list on there of what they are permitted to buy. So it's generally food that would be typical groceries. So fruits, vegetables, baked goods. If we do have people selling meat or dairy products and so forth, they're allowed to purchase that as well. The farmers hold the tokens. At the end of the market day, the farmers turn in the tokens and we track that. And then at the end of each month, from the funds that we had taken from the EBT cards, we issue checks to the farmers, basically paying them back for those tokens. So the account the town holds is basically just a pass-through account to allow the funds to come off the EBT cards, be held by the town in trust until we get the tokens back from the farmers, and then reissue them the money in check form. So it's very similar to the way we manage our HUD program, except that's managed by a third party. But we also hold accounts for HUD so that when we have people in the town who use that housing assistance, they are able to do that with the town holding the account, but it being managed actually by an outside party. So this is a very similar construct. This policy just kind of lays out how the town would do this and an overview of the process. And then once we actually receive the machines and we get the very specific detail, we'll be writing a very detailed kind of process for us to know exactly how to track everything and then reconcile the account. So does anyone have any questions on that?
This is being done at other farmers markets in the area.
It
correct?
is. So this is actually, if we're a little cutting edge here, there are only 2 other towns in the state that actually do it with the town. Most farmers markets, it's done by third-party vendors that are typically churches or other 501c3s if a market has its own 501c3. But North Tonawanda is one that actually does it. And what was the other one? It was also out in Western New York. I can't think of it. There are 2 of them out there that actually the towns administer it.
Right, but there's other markets where they're doing this just in
Absolutely.
a different way. So the person at the table that's doing the exchange, that's going to be a town employee?
That will be me.
That will be you.
Yes,
Okay.
until we absolutely have a solid process. And then it will be a very limited people that have already been approved by the town board as members of the farmers market committee. But it will be me initially to make sure that everything works properly.
And they'll be volunteering their time, is that
Yes,
right? Oh,
correct.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you. And the actual vendors, though, they also have to have some sort of process they go through.
They
correct?
do. They actually have an opt-in set of paperwork that was sent by the farmers market that says that they're willing to accept these tokens as money and then be reimbursed for them.
Thank you, Beth.
Absolutely.
So there's no cost to the town except for your time? of course,
Correct. Well, and not even my time. It's
'cause
free.
volunteer.
Yes.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you. I'm a big fan of food, so it's a win-win for everybody. Okay, the next thing, this is a resolution to add the position of paralegal to the town. This is something that I've started conversations with the supervisor and town attorney just as we're looking forward to the budget. I thought that it might be worthwhile to add the position with allowing the town to have the discussion during the budget of potentially, instead of hiring outside counsel as we've done, which can be very expensive, if we were to look into hiring either a part-time or full-time paralegal, we could get a lot of the same services for a significantly discounted price. I know a number of other towns have looked into that and had some success with that. And I wanted us to add the position to the town so that if we choose to do that, we can fund it and use the position. But because we have to work with civil service, it takes us a certain amount of time to do that. So I'd like to just kind of add it. We don't have to use it if we don't want to, but it gives us the opportunity to look into whether or not that might be a cost savings in the next year's budget.
So are you on board with this, Elena? So can you speak a little bit about this? And I know, just for clarification for everybody here and anybody watching, I mean, usually at the town, we've had a full-time sort of person here at the town as a town attorney, and then 2 part-time attorneys. Right now, we have 1 full-time person, Elena Finnan, and we have a person that's sort of part-time, but really only working on an hourly basis for us.
Not even really part-time. I mean, he kind of fills in for me when I can't make a meeting just because there are so many of them. But for the most part, it's just me and Beth came to the supervisor and I with this idea. I'm definitely interested in it. I know that we've had discussions about what the department would look like in budgeting for next year. A huge chunk of what I do is paperwork, returning phone calls, sending emails, things of that nature, that if I had somebody who could kind of take that part of the caseload away, it would free me up to do a lot more of the legal work, where there would not be as much of a need for outside counsel.
But we still would be having a town attorney or at the proper meetings, zoning, planning.
Yes.
Right.
Would a legal secretary be able to fill that role instead of a paralegal?
I haven't looked at what the civil service requirements for that would be. I mean, there's a lot more things that a paralegal can do that a legal secretary can't do. So, I mean, we can continue to have that discussion, but it sounded like from our conversations and what I'm the most in need of, a paralegal would be
Okay.
the way to go.
So this would just be holding the money in the budget to use if we decide to at a future date.
This isn't anything for the current budget. It's not at all for the current budget. It would allow us, as we're starting to craft next year's budget, if this was a position we wanted to consider, rather than putting as much funding in for hiring outside counsel, we could balance that with hopefully a smaller amount for outside counsel, just as a supplemental, and then instead of having quite so much money in there, put a reduced amount in for a paralegal.
Seems like a good idea. Certainly could save some money, and most of the work that the attorneys have to do, a paralegal certainly couldn't do, sitting in a lot of meetings and resolutions and preparing a lot of the paperwork. So sounds like a good idea.
Okay, the next is a resolution to extend the grant writer's contract through the 1st of July. Her current contract was complete the 1st of June, and she is working still to finish putting together the COPS grant that was authorized. It is due on Friday, and she has been diligently wrapping that up last week and this week. So I just want to ensure that we extend her contract for a month so that we can pay her for her time. I think it will be well worth it if this grant comes through. It's a very good opportunity. The next was a discussion regarding establishing reserves for the general and highway funds. We started a little bit of this conversation earlier. We have a town policy that once the fund balance for general or highway reach a certain point, we are supposed to then take any excess and invest that in a reserve fund. General is not there yet, but highway is, and the reserve funds themselves have not yet been established. So I did want to have a conversation just to look into establishing those reserves for the future so that we'd be able to shift the money there for safekeeping. I would recommend putting it as a capital reserve, a type reserve, based on the information that I had sent to everybody. That is probably the most common type of reserve to do and use. It would give us the ability to basically set that money aside and then use that for purchases down the road, large pieces of capital equipment and so forth, so that we would not have to bond for them. And I know I spammed everybody. I apologize. There's a lot of history and information on reserves, but I wanted you all to have that to look at and think about as you're working through this process. And Seth had also asked, and I'm sorry, Seth, I told you I didn't have it on here, and I was not correct. I did tuck it in at the back. Discussion regarding the cloud-hosted email services. I did not have backup for this. It came in this afternoon, so Seth has it now. Would you mind speaking to that? And I apologize for putting you on the spot.
Oh, sorry.
So this is something that I know has come up before, Bill and John. I'm sure you've heard this before, that the town hosts its own email, and it's advisable for us to move to the cloud for that service. So I've been getting some quotes. One of the reasons why it's a good time now to do this is because the current email server, the software, is reaching end of life, so it would have to be upgraded. There are significant fees that are associated with that upgrade and the licensing for it. And then annually, we also host our own on-premises archiving for FOIL requests and the anti-spam, antivirus feature that tries to block stuff that comes in before it comes in. Currently, we pay just about $5,000 a year for the archiver and the anti-spam. On top of that, when we go, because if we don't go to the cloud, we're going to have to spend the money on the licenses for the Windows server, the client access licenses for that server, the Exchange server, and the client access licenses for the Exchange server. So year one to host our own email on premises is $20,000. So that would have to be spent this year. After that, it's about $5,000 a year. So that averages out to about $10,100 every year that we're paying to host our own email service. Cloud is slightly more expensive, but it gets us quite a few extra features. I got two quotes for the two largest services. One's Office 365, which is Microsoft's product. And then the competitor to that is Google with their Google Suite or Google Workspace or Google Apps. It's been called a couple different names over the years.
Is that Gmail?
That's Gmail, yes. But it also includes Sheets, Docs, Google Meets. Currently, actually, that's something else we can figure into it because we're spending about $2,000 a year now for our current Google Meet capacity. And I'll revise the numbers for you, Beth, so that way we can figure out, because for Office 365, it was $20,800 per year. For Google, it comes out to about $14,040 a year.
To do what?
That's the hosting our email on the cloud.
And provide security services or not? It's just not hosting, is it? So for example, I have Gmail through my office. I don't think I pay any of that stuff, right? Because I probably aren't worried about spam and all the like.
Well, depending, if your office email is at Gmail, that's free. But if, let's say it's at, at your domain name.com,
Okay.
you're paying a monthly fee. More than likely, it's probably $5 a user or $8 a user or $20 a user, depending on what you're actually getting in the package. The packages I spec'd out for the cloud hosted include MFA, which is a requirement. That's multi-factor authentication. That's when you get a code to your phone or you have to use an app to authenticate that you are who you say you are. That's required by our our cyber insurance policy. As part of our signing this year, it was understood that we were going to be moving towards MFA. The new on-prem service, if we go that route, I would have to enable MFA, which is a very complicated process for on-premises. They also include anti-spam protection, and they include the archiving for FOIL requests and searches like that. So I was trying to go apples to apples because we would no longer be having the Barracuda, so we would need. So like for the MFA and the anti-spam, it's actually $5.40 a user per month. And I'm going to get you out.
So we have that many users. That's why it adds up to the.
Yeah, we have at least 130 users.
Okay.
We probably have 145 email addresses, but I'm going to try to consolidate down because there's no point paying $10 a user for somebody that's, it's just an extra email address that they might check every once in a while. We'll make it an alias and, not pay for it every month. It's just like the phones. We actually cut down on the number of handsets around the building because with the new system, we're paying per phone. So it made sense to try to keep the costs down. So, and the quotes are based on 130 users that I got.
So you're saying that the 365 would be more money, but the Google is going to be a little less money because you said hosting it ourselves was going to be approximately 20,000 a year.
Yes, 20,000 a year for the first year because you're paying for the licenses one time. And then there's the Barracuda fees that are about $5,000 a year. So when it comes down to it, the first year you're at 20,000 and change. Year 2 and 3, you're at, because I got quotes for 3 years. Because the problem is if we don't lock in for 3 years, the price is just going to keep going up. Google used to be, if John locked in 5-8 years ago, it's probably $3.50 a user. You can't get in for under $6 a user at this point. So,
Is Barracuda the system that we use that now? Would that be the system the other two use? Okay, so you're
No.
talking about what we have now, the cost.
if let's say we wanted to go Office 365 and Barracuda as a combination, Barracuda alone is $32 a user per month. So for the archiving and for the anti-spam. So I worked it every which way I could to try to keep costs down. I even considered Amazon Workmail, which is technically cheaper. It's $4 a user per month. But the issue is you would then have to spend the money on another solution to archive, which at $32 a user, it's $32 a user per year, sorry. So then you tack on a few extra dollars there. They don't have an MFA solution, so you have to go third party there, which is another $2 to $3 a month per user. So it just spirals going piecemeal like that. So, but I did try to consider that.
Okay, so you'll try to get some more numbers together for us to look at that. When does this decision have to be made?
It doesn't really have to be made all that. It has to be made before the end of the year. Only pressing thing is one of the Barracuda renewals is due by the end of the month, but that's a small dollar figure. That's like $1,500 or $1,600.
You talk about the archival just for FOIL, so the email is not going to be archived. How long will the emails be saved?
We have to keep them, I believe, for 7 years.
7 years.
So it's going to be, all of these systems figure in keeping it for 7 years.
So what are you suggesting the best deal is?
Well, the best deal is Google because the other issue that I did not figure into this is the Barracuda hardware. We have two pieces. We have the archiver and we have the anti-spam. They're both physical pieces of hardware in the server room. Those are approaching 5 years. So at some point, those are going to have to get replaced also. So there's another cost there.
This is our own storage.
Correct.
Yeah.
As opposed to paying Google for the storage and it's all included.
Have you looked into what other municipalities are using either Google or 365?
Schenectady County and Rotterdam are both using Office 365. So, and it's a discussion we should have offline. There are certain things. Office 365, the way it works, you connect your internal domain to the cloud stuff. So like, yes, it's a single sign-on. You walk into your office, you use your same username and password to get your webmail, just like you do right now. But now you have a third party you have to trust with access to your cloud services or to your local domain. So, and there have been compromises because of that before. Recently, there was one, and we won't go into it
Okay.
publicly. Okay. But I'm more than happy to have that discussion as to why. So,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
Okay, going down to, from transportation, we have a number of resolutions. The first thing we have actually is just finance approval for the cost of tree removal that was brought up during the previous committee meeting. The tree is total $4,320. You'll see that backup for that in your package. Following that, we were going to need a resolution to authorize expenditures for repairs to the basketball courts. This is being paid for through a grant that had been received. It's 3 separate estimates that are in your backup and along with a sole source letter that Ray put together. In case you have any questions. Next, we have a resolution to amend a resolution regarding the purchase of lawn mowing equipment. Rather than purchasing 1 mower, we were going to adjust that to purchasing 2 mowers that we could actually get. Unfortunately, the one that Ray wanted to purchase is not available for over a year, I believe it was. So he did some research and found 2 mowers that used together could meet the needs of what he needs to do for his department that he can actually get. And it's actually slightly less money. So that's all good. After the mowers, we have a resolution to amend the purchase of a truck. It's also included, there was just an administrative mistake in the initial resolution. The two amounts should have been summed and they weren't properly. So my apologies for that. The next is a resolution to amend the initial resolution purchasing the UTV. That is attached with the adjusted price and vendor as well. We are anticipating a resolution for the purchase of another truck. Sorry, that should be singular. The mini bid is out. We're waiting for that information back, and that will be ready by the time we get to the board meeting. And finally, looking for a resolution to allow for an extension for the use of time accruals. And that was all that we had for this evening.
Is that a blanket extension or is that just for certain
It was a very specific one.
departments? Very specific. Thank you.
Thank you. And are there any other items that need to be added from the floor? Okay.
Waiting on a quote to repair a pump at the wastewater treatment plant. I still don't have a number yet, and it looks like it's going to be just over the threshold that would require Finance Committee. But if I don't have the number at this point, can I just do a resolution at the end of the month? I don't know, how does that work? It's going to be, I'm expecting somewhere around $5,500 for the repair.
So it's just over your spending.
Anything over 3,000 for a repair requires finance.
Finance.
And what he's saying is he doesn't have the
I don't-
amount for finance. So instead of waiting until the next finance committee, he wants to put it on for the June 30th meeting. I don't see any
That
issue
should be
with that.
fine, right?
Because I expect a firm number by the end of this week or early next week. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that looks like all we have for tonight's finance meeting agenda. At this time, I'll make a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you. We stand adjourned and we'll move on to the agenda committee meeting.